being a white-blue control player, but he recently shifted over to black-blue because from what he said to me, black-blue is about the only true blue-based control deck that you can run right now if you don't want to be using little hawks.
I totally agree.
And he doesn't want to be playing with little hawks. He thinks that they're dumb. Now, importantly also, Shaheen is kind of famous for not being a fan of Preordain. He does have 4 Preordains in his list. His opponent, Mike Morris, is basically playing very close to the Ruel Bantpod list from French Nationals, including the Stonehorn Dignitary. We've got a turn 1 Preordain off of, I believe, an island. Yep, from Mike Morris.
It's funny. I don't know if it's it's in the light that looked kind of like a plains.
Yeah, it did look like a little bit of like a plains. And we see a Preordain in return off of a Dark Slick Shore from Shaheen Soorani. For those of you who are just joining us now, I'm Adrian Sullivan here with Joey Pasco.
All right, so
second Preordain
from Mike, yeah.
Now, interestingly, earlier our head judge, he is from France, and he said that the Ruel lists, that the Ruels themselves have taken out Razor Hippogriff from Bantpod. Mike Morris has not changed his list. He still runs Razor Hippogriff.
So Seachrome Coast added to the board for Mike, and Shaheen mirrors his opponent's turn 2 play with a second Preordain. And I doubt he'll be playing a Seachrome Coast here, though. No, but a Creeping Tar Pit for Shaheen. Yeah, I'm partial to the Bantpod list myself. A friend of mine has been playing that. There's the ever popular Rug Pod list of late recently, which I definitely saw a lot of out there as I was walking around. Turn 3 for Mike, plays a Seagate Oracle.
Seagate Oracle, one of those cards that is very, very subtle in the way that it influences games. Just having that free body, 1/3, with a little bit of card selection doesn't seem like it's very powerful, but it does add up.
It's one of the cards I'm going to miss 6 weeks from now when it rotates.
A Swamp from Shaheen Soorani, now up to 3 mana. Shaheen does have 4 Jace Beleren. A lot of the decks that are these controlling decks are not running very many Jace Belerens, but Shaheen is running the whole amount, and he passes the turn. Most likely saving up a mana leak for a Birthing Pod.
Yeah, seems like the right play there. Birthing Pod can be a real pain to deal with.
Viridian Emissary from Michael Morris.
Yeah, the thing with these Bantpod lists specifically, well, really, it's kind of both Birthing Pod lists. They kind of just play a lot of innocuous little creatures. You know, Seagate Oracle doesn't seem so strong, like you mentioned. Viridian Emissary is not so threatening, but as soon as the Birthing Pod comes down, they start turning into much wilder, much stronger guys.
Shaheen mana leaks that Viridian Emissary and then follows up on his own turn with Inquisition of Kozilek, seeing another Viridian Emissary, a Phantasmal Image, and
that's a Phyrexian Metamorph and a Terramorphic Expanse.
Yeah, he discards the Phantasmal Image.
That's the pre-release Metamorph. And a Jace Beleren added to the board for Shaheen. Draws a card.
You know, I certainly love seeing Jace Beleren these days.
Yeah.
It's so nice to have a fair card draw engine.
Are you saying Jace the Mind Sculptor was unfair?
He was a little unfair. Viridian Emissary hits the table.
And of course resolves. We know Shaheen's tapped out there, so
Tectonic Edge, taking out Creeping Tar Pit.
Yeah, so from the control standpoint, one way to, well, let's see. Shaheen actually plays Despise and takes the Phyrexian Metamorph, leaving Mike with, was that a Nature's Claim?
You know, it might well have been. He does have 1 Nature's Claim in his main deck.
Yeah, I believe it was. And a Seachrome Coast, I think, was the other card. Yeah, from the control player standpoint, one way to fight the Birthing Pod list is to just keep the creatures off the board. The other way is keep the Birthing Pod off the board. So at this point, Mike has not seen a Birthing Pod yet, so making it a little bit easier for Shaheen.
Shaheen upped his Jace there.
Yeah.
And it looks like he's taking damage rather than attacking the Jace. Mike attacking Shaheen directly.
Right.
Shaheen first probably got on the national radar a few years ago with a top 8 appearance in U.S. Nationals. Players that were on the East Coast knew him already, but most people first noticed him at the Michael Jacob winning U.S. Nationals. Shaheen playing a blue-green deck that tournament, and Michael Jacob winning with mono-red.
Was that in Baltimore? I'm trying to remember.
No, that was
LSV
that was in Chicago.
LSV won in Baltimore, I think the previous year, maybe is what I'm thinking of.
Mike pondering his options. Not casting Ponder, but pondering his options. The French list that Michael Morris is playing...
there's a birthing pod.
There's a birthing pod. Do you have the answer? Shaheen could, for example, in response to this birthing pod, kill one creature and bounce another.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't get him very far.
Right, because Mike can just add another creature to the board with Shaheen tapped out. So looks like he may be going with that. So he Doomblades the Seagate Oracle.
This is pretty good. I mean, just slowing the... and he's like, okay,
Yes.
wait 1 second. I might do something here.
Yeah, Mike swings in with the Viridian Emissary.
It would not be unreasonable here for Shaheen to consider casting Into the Royal on
the
birthing pod.
That's what I'm thinking.
Right
yeah.
now.
Yeah, it does. It keeps Mike from being able to use it.
Oh,
this turn, but no,
on
he
the
bounces
emissary.
Okay.
I kind of like bouncing the birthing pod there, but that's also reasonable because Mike can't activate the birthing pod. And then here it comes. Here's a big guy.
Consecrated Sphinx.
Consecrated Sphinx is such a monster. And then Shaheen does what a lot of people fail to do. He uses the +2 ability of Jace so that they both draw a card. That triggers his Consecrated Sphinx, and then he gets 2 more cards. It's a pretty obvious play,
right?
But often, since you're so not used to
+2
decrement or to incrementing the Jace, people sometimes forget that that's a way to do it. I mean, I was playing the other day, and someone failed to do that to me on Moto, and I was very thankful. Untap now, Mike Morris draws a card, and Shaheen gets 2 more cards. He's up 5 cards from a moment ago. Solemn Simulacrum.
That birthing pod can get out of hand pretty soon, though. He's got the Solemn Simulacrum on board, which can birthing pod up into an acidic
slime, most likely. Razor Hippogriff doesn't do much here. He does not have a real answer for the Consecrated Sphinx in his main deck. About the only thing he can do to it is copy it with a Metamorph or with a Phantasmal Image.
And he's lost both of those already.
Well, he does have extra copies. He's got 2 Phantasmal Images in his deck and 2 Metamorphs.
Okay, yeah, so he's lost 1 of each of those. One got Despised and the other got Inquisitioned away. So the birthing pod activates, sacrificing the Solemn Simulacrum. There's a word I struggle to say. So there is the Hippogriff, which didn't exactly expect here. I expected the acidic slime.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the Hippogriff does for him here. I mean, I understand it brings back a Solemn Simulacrum if he wants. Well, I guess, pardon me, it does bring back the Metamorph.
The Metamorph, that's actually...
The Metamorph is really significant because
exactly
he can
what
use
he's
that.
doing here, yeah.
But now, with Shaheen having drawn so many cards, it's going to have to get through whatever Shaheen has in his hand.
Which is pretty much his entire deck. It looks like Shaheen has about 9 or 10 cards in hand right now. He's got definitely, I see a Grave Titan at the top, shuffled to the front of his hand.
Now, what he has to do here is he has to actually consider clearing out all of the creatures. He only has 1 main deck Into the Royal and 1 Karn Liberated as actual answers to a birthing pod.
And he's used the Into the Royal.
Yeah, the Into the Royal's gone, so now he actually has to figure out how to push through that birthing pod. Now, alternately, one could say Mike has to figure out how to get through that Consecrated Sphinx.
Yeah, well, he did grab the Metamorph back, right? And I believe that's what he grabbed.
That's it. Well, yep, that's his plan, I believe. I don't know.
So
that
rather
would be
than
the
getting
plan I
through
would
the
make.
Sphinx, he's copying it. Yeah. So there's the Karn as well. So
Does he have a Karn in his
Shaheen
hand?
has the Karn in his hand. He's dropped the land, so he has the Karn available here.
The problem with just dropping down the Karn, which here it's going to happen, it's probably going to eat the pod, I'm guessing. Yep, there it is.
Yeah.
The problem with doing this, he's tapped out now, which means Mike Morris definitely can copy the Sphinx.
And in this case, he actually just drew one off of Jace. He did not give Mike an additional card. Alright, so Mike has the option here to have a Sphinx of his own. He lays a Celestial Colonnade. That's the Buy a Box promo.
See, I'm glad
very
you know
partial
this
to that
alternate art
yeah.
because I definitely don't know all the promo art.
I was talking to a couple people actually this morning already, talking about how much I love the alternate art, but I'm not a foil fan, so I kind of lose out one way or another. I like that art way better than the original art, but just don't like foils. So there's the Metamorph.
And we're gonna find out what's gonna happen on this next turn.
Yeah,
Are we gonna have a Sphinx War?
Yeah, this is one of the craziest interactions in Standard. Like, I feel like so. Sphinx blocks the Hippogriff.
Untap.
And
Shaheen
so
draws one.
Draws a card.
Mike draws two. Okay, now Shaheen has a choice.
Yeah.
He's got two triggers of draw two. Does he just want to stop? If I were Shaheen, I've got so many more cards than my opponent right now. I would just stop.
I mean, it really depends on what he's got, but I think he's got a lot to choose from in his hand. I mean, you can see he's got
Doomblades in his deck.
nine cards in his hand.
Well, what he can do also is he can cast Doomblade on the Metamorph if he has one in his hand. Those triggers are still on the stack.
Oh, and then
draw the four afterwards.
That's a good point. It's a nice interaction.
Nope,
but
he
did
chooses to stop right there.
Yeah.
In comes the Sphinx.
Seems right.
Dismember or Black Sun Zenith being possible follow-ups. I believe we're going to see a Black Sun Zenith for 2 here.
Were there no blocks? I'm not sure
think
what
that he
happened
blocked. Black Sun Zenith for 2.
So would assume he blocked.
There was a block then.
Clears the board of Sphinxes and Emissaries. Mike is able to get a land from that Emissary.
Shaheen is more than happy to get rid of the Sphinxes on the table. He has so much card advantage already that even though Mike Morris was able to pull back a little bit there,
it wasn't significant compared to what Shaheen's got.
12 million cards in his hand.
He's dealt with the Birthing Pod. He's dealt with all the creatures on the board. He's got tons of cards in his hand and 2 Planeswalkers in play.
Karn is no slouch.
And I'm pretty sure he
activates Karn to make Mike lose another card.
Right.
Birthing Pod, and it's joined by a Nature's Claim.
Seems good. And
follows up with Inquisition of Kozilek. What do we see here? A Viridian Emissary. It looks like a Wormcoil Engine.
Acidic Slime, Wormcoil Engine, Emissary, and
a Viridian Corruptor.
Viridian Corruptor, yeah. So 2 big threats he'd rather not hit the table that he can't hit with the Inquisition. But if he has Mana Leak in hand,
Mana Leak
he's got
pretty weak right now.
It's dead. Yeah, he's got. Mike has plenty of lands in play to pay for.
I mean, that Wormcoil Engine, I'm pretty sure is going to hit the table, but Karn can just knock it away.
Karn can take care of that engine pretty easily.
I love Karn. I mean, if I were playing Black-Blue Control, I'd be playing 2 Karn. I'm a wild man.
Yeah. So, Tech Edge takes out, I believe, a Colonnade. It's just off screen there. Tech Edge from Shaheen, that is, takes out the Colonnade from Mike. So Mike, with it looks like 8 lands in play, he's counting as well. He can, well, Shaheen's tapped out. He can do whatever he wants. He's going to get more value out of the acidic slime here because the worm coil engine is just going to eat 3 counters off of Karn. Which is pretty significant if he doesn't want Shaheen to be restarting the game. But at this point, the Shaheen's advantage to restarting the game with Karn, it's pretty low. He's just got a birthing pod there that he would start the game with. Not really a big deal for either player.
For those of you who are looking online, if you go to the Richmond coverage, Shaheen played this very deck to the top 4 of Standard last week in Richmond, with one difference. He used to play Stoic Rebuttal. He has replaced that and does not have Stoic Rebuttal anymore. And I'll figure out what he replaced it with. It looks like it was a second Consume the Meek.
So Mike does decide to play the acidic slime and take out a creeping tar pit. Seems a lot more reasonable than playing the worm coil engine.
And here's a birthing pod.
Okay, so Mike able to...
I predict that Karn will eat birthing pod. Preordain.
What exactly is Mike doing? Yeah, he's going to say he's looked like he untapped for some reason. So Mike's tapped out, unable to take advantage of the birthing pod and acidic slime on the table.
There's actually very little that he can get with that birthing pod at this point.
Yeah, what are his 6 drops here? The typical 6 drops are Titans, but...
Sun Titan, Frost Titan, Worm Coil Engine. Okay, the reason I said there was very little is that his deck list was written in such a way that the 6s were all segregated far away from the rest of his list.
Yeah.
So I actually was like, where is his top end? I don't see it.
Honestly,
but he does have
his sideboard.
I thought it was in his sideboard too, but it's definitely not.
Yeah.
He does have Worm Coil Engine in his hand already. Viridian Corruptor comes down.
Meanwhile, Karn did eat the second birthing pod.
Yep, and Bird of Paradise.
Grave Titan added to the board for Shaheen, which this is rough. I would hate to be sitting there across from a Jace, Beleren, a Karn, and a bunch of zombies and a Grave Titan. That's a pretty rough position to be in.
And looks like Karn eats, I think, a Worm Coil Engine from the hand.
It was Mike down to nothing left?
Yeah, he's down to nothing
he's
left.
Handless, empty-handed there.
Black Sun Zenith for 2, I believe. Clears out the board except for now a 4/4 Grave Titan. Now Mike Morris has no creatures.
No cards in hand.
No cards in hand.
Already lost at least one Celestial Colonnade to a Tech Edge, and I don't believe he has a second in play at the moment.
And for those of you who remember the power of Jace plus Liliana, Jace plus Karn is actually better. But
yeah.
Let's both draw a card, empty-handed guy. Okay.
Yeah.
How about you lose that forever?
+2ing both Planeswalkers. Oh, well, he's not +2ing the Karn. +3ing the Karn. Is it 3 or +4? It's +4 on Karn? Yeah. It's -3 or +4, I think, on Karn.
It's +4, -3.
Exactly.
Yeah. Solemn Simulacrum from Shaheen.
So, even though that Titan's a little weaker, 4/4 is not bad.
I don't mind it.
Especially a 4/4 that puts 4 more power in play every time it attacks. Jace. Jace goes to the graveyard. I have a feeling another Jace may hit the board right now. This turn for Shaheen.
And Mike just scoops it up. I might have scooped it up a second ago.
Yeah, it's got he was quite a bit behind there.
Well, I mean, once you have out a Grave Titan and a Karn with like at least 5 or 6 counters on it, if you're empty-handed, there's not much you can do to come back.
Yeah,
you know, like
it's just not much you're going to be able to do. Especially like these Bant decks have, almost the entire deck is sorcery speed. So it's not as if you can it's like you need to play the card during your turn, or you're not playing it at all.
His out basically was Sun Titan. What he would have to do is go Sun Titan, return Phantasmal Image, copying Sun Titan, return Phantasmal Image to copy Grave Titan. That would be, I think, the play that would have to happen.
That seems like a pretty ridiculous recovery. Pretty good recovery.
Honestly, Sun Titan plus Phantasmal Image is pretty crazy.
One of the more absurd interactions in Standard. Now that we've got Phantasmal Image, that's a card a lot of people kind of overlook. You know, you look at it and you're like, yeah, it's just a clone. I mean, it costs half, but it's an illusion, you know?
Right.
But every spell that ever targets it would have killed it anyway. You know, you're going to dismember a Phantasmal Image. I mean, sometimes you have to if it's...
So Shaheen's sideboard, he has 3 Torpor Orb, which are actually very powerful in this matchup, because the Birthing Pod deck basically does most of its work with creatures coming into play and doing things.
Yeah.
187 Effects is the old school name.
Yeah.
And Torpor Orb turns all that off. But besides that, he also has access to Black Sun Zenith, which is very good for sweeping the board.
As you saw.
He might bring in Disfigure, just to get rid of early elves and birds, as well as to kill Phantasmal Images. But that's more of a maybe.
Yeah, it's definitely great to be able to take out the early mana creatures.
Flash Freeze is also reasonable as a counterspell for
the Birthing Pod?
For Birthing Pod, amongst other things. On the other side of the table, we've got a lot of creatures, most of which I think are not actually very useful against Shaheen. One of the cards that might be useful might be Archon of Justice.
Yeah.
Nature's Claim is also in the sideboard, which probably won't come in unless he sees Torpor Orb.
Yeah, unless he or expects a Torpor Orb.
Yeah, or expects Torpor Orb.
Devout Lightcaster, one of the more interesting inclusions that I've seen people playing in these decks, just as a one of.
Yep, Devout Lightcaster.
Protection from black seems pretty decent. Exile a black permanent.
It can exile Liliana or a Grave Titan.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if Devout Lightcaster shows up then.
And it's protection from black itself, so it can block that Grave Titan all day long. Doesn't die. Yeah. There's no Jace to bounce it, and all of Shaheen's removal is black, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it seems like a really good creature to have on board. Now, of course, the sweepers will take care of it. Bravo.
That's
Pizza.
right. For those of you who are just joining us, we are here in Boxborough, Massachusetts for the Star City Games Boston Standard Tournament. Shaheen Soorani is on your right. He is up 1-0 versus Mike Morris. Shaheen playing once again the black-blue control deck that he took to the top 4 of the last Star City Games in Richmond. Only 1 card difference in his main, and that's an extra Consume the Meek. I love that card. That's awesome.
It's great against the a lot of the aggro decks, especially. Tempered Steel seems to have fallen off a bit, but it's great against those decks where they're activating, Glinthawk Idol, and just things that like Inkmoth Nexus, things that you can't take care of at sorcery speed. Those Consume the Meeks can really, really wreck an aggro deck. Big fan of those. But yeah, as I was saying, there's two seem to be the two most popular or most well-performing pod lists are the Bant pod lists, as Mike is playing, and the Rug pod list, which Michael Jacob and Patrick Chapin have been championing recently. I know Chapin came in 9th at Nationals with it. Both decks very strong. The Rug pod list has the Inferno Titan Urabrask kind of options in the deck.
Urabrask, so good. It's not just that it's
deceptively good
in a deck as a answer to Splinter Twin. It's also that from a defensive perspective, your opponent is really, really hurt, and then from your offensive perspective, you getting haste for your creatures is huge.
Yeah, you see interactions like Urabrask hitting the board, and then an Acidic Slime being Birthing Potted up into an Inferno Titan.
Right.
It seems pretty sick. That's a heck of a life swing right there. Another option in the deck is the Hero of Oxid Ridge, which I think is a pretty underrated card right now. It's getting a little more love recently, but as soon as all these players playing Timely Reinforcements Hero of Oxenridge is a fantastic answer to timely reinforcements.
Right.
And of course, Hawks and Emiria Angel, another popular card that puts 1/1s into play. So Mike leads off with Misty Rainforest, cracked into a Llanowar Elf.
We're gonna have to see what Mike chooses to bring in here.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier in game one, Shaheen's primary line of attack is to either just keep the creatures off the board or keep the birthing pod off the board. But
he can go both angles.
Right, he did that actually last game. He did a great job of doing both. But sometimes, if you just worry about birthing pod, they just beat you down with little, again, innocuous seeming creatures like Llanowar Elves and Seagate Oracles and Viridian Emissaries.
Is that a
that was
disfigure?
It looks like a dismember to me.
Dismember? Okay. Turn 1, yep, dismember. Dismember the Llanowar Elf, lays another land, and then Mike Morris here on turn 3, Birthing Pod hits a mana leak.
So Shaheen again doing a great job of both lines of attack. Keep the creatures off the board, keep the Birthing Pod off the board.
Killing that first mana creature is so huge just because you're getting a quasi time walk effect.
Yeah.
And then we get a Creeping Tar Pit, and there's a Bird of Paradise, which is now much less important because it's not accelerating past where Shaheen's ready to respond. It's still of value, but it just doesn't have the same kind of value. A 5th land from Shaheen, an island. He says go. 4 mana total for Mike Morris. He lays a coming into play tapped land, the green-white land, Razor Verge Thicket, and we see a double Tectonic Edge from Shaheen to knock Mike Morris down. Mike adds a Bird of Paradise to the mana, which actually Shaheen probably won't mind because a sweep spell can get some devastating effect at this point.
Yeah, Black Sun Zenith for 1 seems pretty good.
And he says go. Mike passes the turn, casts a Phantasmal Image, which a Consume the Meek would be absolutely devastating right now.
Consume the Meek or a Black Sun Zenith for 1. I mean, that could wreck Mike's board position, which, I mean...
Shaheen says go. He's do something that matters yet. You get lots of mana, but it's fragile. 5 mana. Down comes Acidic Slime.
No, Shaheen has 6 lands in play. He's got a Mana Leak. He's got a Grave Titan in hand. He goes with the Mana Leak.
He does Mana Leak it. Untap.
And
5 mana.
Liliana.
And he searches. I would be unsurprised to discover a Consume the Meek or Black Sun Zenith. Probably Black Sun Zenith. There it is. It was a Black Sun Zenith.
Got Jerry Thompson just off camera doing interesting voices.
Yeah, Jerry Thompson, if you ask him about Magic, he'll tell you all that he thinks about it. He's nearby. I'm sure you would have opinions about what Liliana should have gotten, what Mike Morris should do next.
So,
and what do we have? Mike Morris is spending, he lays a 3rd land into play,
so
6 mana,
6.
and it's a Frost Titan, which is going to hit the table.
So, this is one way for Mike to get back into the game. Keeps a Creeping Tar Pit tapped.
Now, the thing that's awesome about Black Sun Zenith here is that Frost Titan is awesome in providing a threat plus disruption. But if you just Black Sun Zenith, the disruption is not that big if it's attached to a really small body.
Yeah. He's got 6 mana available, which means he can make that Titan, make that Titan a 2/2 and wipe Mike's side of the board. So
Okay. Mike Morris untaps, adds a 4th land to the board.
What's that? Yeah.
In comes the Frost Titan. Untap, the Creeping Tar Pit still held down. Liliana makes a discard. It looks like that's an Archon of Justice, so he did bring in Archon of Justice. Grave Titan hits the table. With the Grave Titan there, Frost Titan attacking is just not very reasonable. Even a single zombie can kill the Frost Titan. See a Preordain, Mike Morris looking for something.
AJ, wanna go outside?
Mike Morris still wondering what's going to happen next, looking for a plan. He attacks, holds down the Grave Titan. Both of the tokens block from Shaheen. Either one of them could kill Frosty. Birthing Pod comes down after. And I see a pair of Torpor Orbs now from Shaheen.
This will, the Torpor Orbs really wreck the Birthing Pod decks.
Yeah.
Specifically the Bant Pod ones even more, just because of the Rug Pod lists typically play, things like Eurobrask, and a 6/6 Titan with haste is still pretty good. Even if it doesn't do 3 when it hits the battlefield, it still does 3 when it swings.
Shaheen points out the zombie token. Don't forget the zombie.
All right, so a second Grave Titan, and Mike scoops him up. That we were talking to Shaheen earlier, and he said he doubled up on Grave Titans in round 1 as well for his win in round 1. So double Grave Titan. I've heard 1 is good. I guess 2 is twice as good. Pretty awesome. So Shaheen easily takes that match. It seemed pretty easy to me against Mike Morris playing Bant Pod, but I wouldn't count out the Bant Pod just yet. I think it may be that Shaheen. Shaheen's a pretty good player.
Yeah, Shaheen
knows
is a
how
great
to play
player.
control.
Yeah.
And but I think Bant Pod's still a really solid.
Oh yeah,
deck.
it's a real deck. I mean, I think one of the things that was surprising is that this is a 61 card list. It's basically the list from the French Nationals,
Right.
the Ruel list.
Right.
But like 61 cards, people are often trying to figure out what to shave from the Bant Pod list to make it down to 60. And I know a lot of people cut out the Stonehorn Dignitary, but I actually kind of like it. I think that the Stonehorn Dignitary gives you the ability to pseudo-fog in ways that do a lot of work. Particularly when you talk about Venser, and you talk about your ability to copy it with images and with Metamorph.
Yeah.
I mean, you can